The Princess's Look by Senka Dodig. Far away, across the sea, at 100 days of sailing distance, there is an island. Oval-shaped, it resembles an eye. The coral reef that in semicircle protects it on the northern side looks like the eyebrow. That's how the island got its name, the Island of Eye. An old and almost forgotten story tells of a girl who saved the royal family in the Island of Eye by stopping the entire army just by one look of her coal black eyes. This extraordinary power was bestowed on the girl while she was still a little child, when a pack of wolves attacked her near the shabby cabin she was living in. Her parents left home one day to go fishing, and they never returned. The waves scattered the wreckage of their tiny boat, but the little girl still firmly believed that they were alive and that she would see them again. The poor child trembled in fear as her eyes continued to gaze over the open sea. She was only 5, wearing ragged clothes, and at the bottom of her heart there was a hunger for life, joy, and love that could give peace to her tortured soul. Suddenly, behind her back, she heard a growling, then another one, and another one again, until finally there was an entire, menacingly growling choir. "Oh, wolves! Hungry wolves!" screamed Andrina in her thin and shrill voice. The blood froze in her veins, while all her pain and sorrow, all her will to live, turned into a tremendous, huge, extraordinary power that permeated her tiny little body. Not understanding what was happening to her, as in trance, she stood up and turned to face the beasts that were getting ready to attack. Lightning flashed from her coal-black eyes so fiercely that the beasts flinched, and then she screamed, a cutting, growling cry beyond imagination. And the beasts were paralyzed. With their hungry jaws wide open, they were petrified on the spot. They still stand there even today. Andrina grew. She managed to feed on wild berries and roots, birds' eggs and seashells. Her ragged clothes became too small, and her mother's 2 dresses were too big. She decided to go to town and find a job. At the beginning she was panhandling. "Spare some food? So help you God. Help me, good people," she begged in a feeble voice, all pale, hungry, and frozen. An old merchant, who had no children of his own, took pity on the poor child. "Dear child, you are cold. Will you come with me?" he asked gently. "But where? Where will you take me?" she replied suspiciously. "To my home. I have no children of my own, and my wife will be glad to see you." "Well, what do you say?" continued the old man gently. "If what you're saying is true, then—" "All right, let's go," she accepted carefully, hesitating. The girl enjoyed her stay at the old merchant and his wife's. A long-lost smile returned to her face. She helped around the house, and every morning, while everybody was still sleeping, she would take food to the royal family. Often she would meet the prince, going hunting early in the morning. He would look at her with admiration. Why wouldn't he? She had grown up into a beautiful young girl. There was a bluish shine in her long black hair, flowing down her shoulders like a cape, and her eyes sparkled. One day, coming back from the castle, fondly singing, she noticed 2 creatures knocking over the store. The old merchant, awakened by the strange noises, entered the store and started yelling. "Thieves! Help! Thieves!" shouted the old merchant at the top of his lungs. The thieves left the house quickly and started running towards the yard fence when Andrina stepped in. She roared with the same animal force she had once used to petrify the wolves. The 2 thieves were petrified in a second, right by the fence, each with one leg up in the air, caught in the act of trying to jump over. People from around town came to their yard to watch in wonder, those statues neither dead nor alive. But as all things must pass, so indeed, people got used to this unusual presence and went on with their everyday lives. A year after this event, one day at dawn, as the night was lifting its dark cloak, the church bells sounded, and after them the bells from the royal castle too. People became agitated. The palace guard was hurrying along the road from the port to the castle. "A ship! A warship! Hide! Into your houses!" Hurrying, the guards yelled to the terrified people. Never had the Island of Eye been attacked before. The king only had an army of around 20 guards who mainly served to parade, and now the cannons were shooting from a distance, and an army of hundreds of foreign soldiers was marching towards the castle. Andrina was about to leave when the castle gate was hastily closed and the guards climbed to the towers that decorated the gate at each side. It was clear to all that the predominant unknown army would manage to break the gates. "We shall all be killed," screamed the queen in fear. "Oh my God, we shall all die," muttered the frightened guards. The king and the young prince exchanged worried glances. The island of Ai could easily be conquered in the blink of an eye. Above the gates there was a small lookout. Andrina climbed on it, staring right in front as if she were sleepwalking. With her fists clenched, she leaned over the edge. Her eyes were blazing with rage, and a sound that came out of her frail young body resounded like a thunder strike. Like the growling of 1,000 mad beasts, it resounded across the kingdom. It shook the ground. The island of Ai was trembling. Then suddenly it all became silent. Andrina was found unconscious, completely exhausted, lying on the lookout floor. And when the guards, still frightened, took a peek over the edge, there was a sight. The mighty army stood petrified in front of the gates. The whole town worked incessantly for 3 days and 3 nights. They arranged the lines of 50 soldiers of the unknown army at each side of the gates. They are still standing there, keeping their eternal stony guard. On their ship they found 2 servants, an old man and an old woman, whom the army had saved from the sea. These 2 people were Andrina's parents. Andrina married the prince. All the trials for lying, stealing, mischief and robbery, instead of by the court, they were solved by Andrina's look. When the guards caught somebody in wrongdoing, they would bring them to the princess to decide their punishment. Petrification for a period of time. That is why on the island of Ai there was no prison. The convicts couldn't move anyway. The Princess Andrina is long gone. Now the island of Ai is ruled by her great-great-grandchildren, all of whom inherited her power of the eye. Sometimes, when the wind is strong and moans around the deserted house on the verge of the island of Ai, it seems as if those wolves, petrified a long time ago, were growling with their jaws widespread, on that island far away across the sea at 100 days of sailing distance. My dear little ones, my friends, I wish you a safe sail through hundreds and hundreds of your children's dreams. Maybe that princess's look is watching over you, guarding your childhood days.